Alan, fiction. Where is the dividing line between the concrete and the abstract? Between mind and matter, such distinctions are increasingly meaningless. The line between fact and fiction becoming hopelessly blurred.
And nowhere as vividly as in Night Springs.
Ever since Max Payne, Remedy has been including fictional pieces of media within their stories. Address Unknown was a cult television series and played a big role in the second game. By the time Alan Wake came out, another series was crafted as a fun collectible. Throughout the game, TV sets can be found which play a short black and white episode of the Night Springs television show. It becomes quickly apparent that they are done in the style of The Twilight Zone, between the Rod Serling impersonator to the moral lessons at the start and end of each episode. For the most part, they are presented to the player as self-contained stories that offer nothing more than a fun pause from combating the Taken. However, it would be a mistake to dismiss them as simple collectibles. Night Springs plays a huge role throughout the series, and not just in this game. American Nightmare, the This House of Dreams blog, Control, and even Quantum Break makes use of the show. Let's take a look at the show itself, then dive beneath the waters and work our way down, zooming in to that dividing line between the concrete and the abstract. The blur of gray is where the true mystery of Night Springs resides. In episode 4 of Alan Wake, Barry Wheeler mentions that Alan once wrote for the show. In fact, it was his first professional writing job. If we pay attention to the episodes in the game, we can isolate one that was written by him. While at its inception the series was independently owned, at some point the rights were purchased by the Federal Bureau of Control. This was done in the furtherance of their experiments in mutable reality and urban legends. While some of this document is redacted, I will do my best to fill in the blanks. Urban legends are believed to infect the creation of altered materials, but can also dictate the characteristics of an altered world event. Urban legends are understood as the modern evolution of Jung's archetypes. We recognize certain symbols, informed by our own unconscious and popularized by our media. We have additionally proven that urban legends can even be artificially created in popular culture using Night Springs, our Bureau-made anthology television program. Once the seeds are sown, human imagination exacerbates the details. Urban legends are a funny thing. Sometimes they are based on historical events, such as the tales of Bloody Mary. Queen Mary I was labeled with this title after the Marian persecutions where hundreds of Protestants were burned at the stake. Being Catholic, this was to stamp out any heresy. However, tales of her cruelty may or may not be fully accurate. Some historians suggest that since her successor, Elizabeth I, was a Protestant herself, the events were told in a hyperbolic way, exaggerated to depict the religious opposition as horrific. Regardless of the truth, this image of Bloody Mary remains in the collective mindset. 5 centuries later, urban legends are told of going in a dark room, looking into the mirror and saying her name 3 times will summon the evil spirit. Because of how widespread this story is, this ritual would actually work in summoning a spirit if done in the Remedy setting. Mary I is not unique in how stories can grow out of control and infect the minds of the populace. The FBC understands how urban legends can become the collective focus of so many minds. In this setting, these can become the housings for Paranatural Forces. When too many stories were told about how cruel and violent the missing writer Alan Wake was, these stories created Mr. Scrooge.
I've seen the enemy, and it's me. I faced dark horrors before, things that live in the unimaginable pressures of the world beyond our own. Sometimes they masquerade as humans. That's what ultimately lurks inside Mr. Scrooge. He's every mean-spirited tabloid story about me, an evil caricature, a creature formed in that vague territory of misconceptions, half-truths, and the dark imagination of people who heard a story about me. An urban legend made flesh, a serial killer, my dark half, brought to life by the power of Cauldron Lake.
In this case, the urban legend was birthed in an organic way. A famous author who writes about death and murder, famous for assaulting the paparazzi, vanishes under mysterious circumstances. People talk. People make up stories. Those stories get passed around until enough people believe it. And for those who don't believe it, they are still aware of it, focused on it. As a result, the story can become real. All of this may seem like a radical tangent, but it directly addresses what the FBC intended to do with Night Springs. Rather than rely on organic urban legends, they intended to custom fabricate them, inject them into the public consciousness, and sit back to see if reality changed as a result. The more viewers they got, the more clicks on the internet, the more reviews by internet personalities could potentially capture paranatural forces and influence events. In practice, they intended to use the viewers of Night Springs to create tulpas. This term evolved in the 20th century from the Tibetan word sprulpa, meaning emanation or manifestation. They are said to be entities manifested from mental powers, thoughts made physical or thought forms. Mr. Scratch is an example of a thought form created by the urban legends of Alan Wake. These stories twisted a previously existing entity residing in the Dark Place into this form. Night Springs does the same, but on a grander scale.
Night Springs doesn't exist. It's a fictional town from the TV show I used to work on. It was Any Place USA, a place we used as a backdrop for whatever strange story we had that week. One of the stories I wrote for the show involved a man, the champion of light, fighting his evil double, the herald of darkness. It was something I'd written back in the real world, something I had a link to, a framework I could build on. I had adapted it into a new story, this story. Now Night Springs is in Arizona, although not for long. It's in Arizona because whatever the town that has become Night Springs is really called is located near one of the thin, worn places in the world where dreams and reality flow together and life is always a little strange. Perfect analogy for Night Springs. I can't return to the real world, I've tried, but I'm operating on dream logic, forcing the door open a crack so I can slip through. I can enter the strange little town of Night Springs. All I did was put it in Arizona for one night.
Due to making use of an episode of Night Springs, Alan was able to physically manifest this fictional town out of the Dark Place and into the real world. The objective reality of this desert town was replaced with the subjective reality of the TV show. The events of the episode played out in real life and became the plot of American Nightmare. After the episode was done, the subjective reality vanished back into the Dark Place, leaving the original town intact. If this sounds nuts, Alan Wake has already set precedents for this to occur. Diver's Isle and Bird's Lake Cabin was a physical location that existed on Cauldron Lake when Alan and Alice arrived. They experienced it firsthand. However, after the island's role in the story was over, it vanished back into the Dark Place, much like a shell caught by the ocean tides and dragged back into the sea. It is no wonder the motel in Night Springs is called Desert Shore, washed away in the Arizona desert after the episode concluded. Night Springs is not simply a television series. It is a town formed in the same manner as tulpas, a thought form that moves around the country. Each time it manifests into the world, strange events occur. The audience who watches the show are implanted with the seeds of these urban legends. Then their collective focus makes them real. Barry Wheeler fell asleep as an episode detailing his best friend's struggle plays on the television set. Samantha Wells is curled up in her new house watching reruns of Night Springs late into the night. The one playing just so happens to detail the events of a woman her age who moves into a new house and finds it to be haunted. The details of the episode are too specific to her current situation to be coincidental. Despite physically being in the town of Ordinary and trying to renovate this old house, Night Springs manifested around her real-life story becoming only an episode in the show. Details learned in American Nightmare give us a hint about where these emanations of Night Springs occur.
There are places where our world is worn thin, and another reality brushes against ours. One such site is Cauldron Lake near Bright Falls, Washington. But there are others. That other reality is dark, vast, and malleable, always in flux. In its depths dwell vast forces and alien energies. They're dangerous. But in one of these places, if you know how, you can channel the power of that place and use it to shape reality.
Cauldron Lake is a weak point in reality that leads to the Dark Place. The oil derricks in the Arizona desert is another. How many other weak spots in the world exist? Alan confirms that the areas surrounding these weak points experience reality working in weird ways. Night Springs may erupt in these specific areas because the urban legends mix with the energy from the Dark Place in a way that makes these fictional stories come true. Of course, the questions here get deeper. Did reality influence the TV show, or did the show influence reality? It is said that literature is a reflection of the culture that made it, but culture can also be influenced by the literature it consumes. So which came first? Remedy has crafted a setting where lines between objective and subjective reality become blurred. Thoughts of what is reality versus what is fiction becomes irrelevant. If someone can imagine it, it can become real. For Samantha Wells, did a random author write a haunted house episode of Night Springs? Did the viewers of this episode manifest the fictional town into the world? Night Springs washing up with the tide and temporarily covering the town of Ordinary. As soon as her blog was over, the town receded and Ordinary returned to normal. Considering that she claimed this episode was a rerun, the story existed before Samantha experienced it. While there may be many reasons for this to happen, the one that I find most likely is directly related to Alan's influence. All artists draw upon previous works as inspiration, adapting here and there as needed and changing things to form something new. The Lion King follows similar story beats to Shakespeare's Hamlet while having enough differences to be its own thing. The Matrix is just a modern interpretation of Plato's allegory of the cave. During American Nightmare, Alan took a previous episode of Night Springs that he wrote and updated it to reflect his current situation. It is very likely that he adopted an episode about the haunted house and used it to send messages out, causing Samantha to be caught up in its events. When the FBC gained rights to the TV show and received all previous episode scripts, they found one written by Wake called Over a Threshold Darkly. The episode is oddly specific and seems to closely resemble the backstory of Control. We have no evidence if this episode was ever aired. If it was, the events involving Dr. Darling and Director Trench could have been guided by the audience watching the TV show, the story taking form in their minds and their thoughts form it into reality where this occurred. If this episode never aired, it could suggest that Alan remembered writing it and adapted the rough idea for the current situation. Either way, Night Springs is not merely a TV show, but a real abstract town that pops into existence when weird things happen and vanishes just as quickly. It can influence real-world events just by having an audience. It can capture extra-dimensional entities within its story. Even the narrator of the show was caught up in the plot. In Quantum Break, Jack finds a TV set showing auditions for a new narrator because the original one vanished under mysterious circumstances. With in-game board games and video games centered on this IP, its cultural spread in the Remedy setting is expansive. Based upon everything we have discussed so far, Night Springs appears to serve as an inspiration for past, present, and future events. Not just for Alan, but for Remedy as well. Already we have seen how episodes ended up shaping future games in the series, such as American Nightmare, Quantum Break, and Control. Alan Wake 2 is currently in development, and maybe a clue about some events can be found in Night Springs. This video officially kicks off a new series for the channel where we will be breaking down each episode, some of which have already been linked to events in the Remedy series, some of which may only be relevant to future installments. I will leave this video off with these final words. The events in each Night Springs episode should not be ignored. All of them likely occurred at some point in some form in this setting. The lore implications of this will be explored in subsequent episodes. See you then. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.